Y'all, Venom The Last Dance is absolute and utter garbage, man. This movie is awful, and I understand. Look, I go into these Sony Marvel movies the same way everyone else should go, with low expectations. We already know the movie's going to be bad, but we're expecting it to at least be entertaining, and this movie couldn't even do that. It couldn't even do that, man. It was actually a little bit too boring in my personal opinion, and the plot of this movie makes no sense. The story is paper thin, just like all these movies. The story's paper thin, the characters are very badly written, and on top of that, the plot holes in this movie are egregious. I had to write some of these down. Number one, why is Venom dancing with Miss Chen? That's another thing. The corniness and the absolute ridiculousness of this movie is just out of control, and I'm not going to sit here and act like, oh, well, the first two movies didn't have their corniness, because they did. They were corny, they had cheesy stuff, but at least Venom 1 was extremely entertaining in my opinion, even though it was a bad movie. Why couldn't this movie just do the same? Nobody wants to see Venom and Miss Chen dancing when it has nothing to do with anything. It wasn't funny, it wasn't cool, I don't care. Same thing with that little family, like they try to get an emotional, reaction out of you with the kids saying goodbye to Eddie and Venom. It's like, nobody cares about this stuff. A couple of the scenes were funny in this film, and it was a little cool to see all the symbiotes fighting at the end, but it's all nonsense. Another issue with the plot, why are these xenophages that Noel is sending out, which first off, Noel does nothing in this movie. He does nothing in this movie. He sits down like this the whole time. Eddie, you have Venom. Codex. What is he doing? One of the most powerful characters in Marvel history, and he's relegated to putting his head at a 90-degree angle and doing nothing all movie. That's ridiculous. But the xenophages that he sends out, they have track of the Codex. They can launch across the planet in like 30 seconds, and all of a sudden when the Codex just disappears because Eddie puts the symbiote back inside, they just disappear and just don't know where they're looking at. They're doing Where's Waldo after the symbiote disappears? It's dumb. Why does this Codex just disappear because the symbiote's gone? You still know where the symbiote is. You just can't see Venom as a big, brawling figure, but you should know where the symbiote is. Is Noel not smart enough to engineer these xenophages? It's like, this movie from top to bottom, it's nonsense. Another point about the xenophage monsters in this movie, why in the world is it that when they cut one of their heads off with the helicopter blade, it just dies? But then when it falls to a plane turbine and gets burnt and charred and cut up to death, it just regens? Like, they just pick and choose when things happen in this movie, and then on top of that, we didn't even talk about the fact that the side characters in this movie are awful. They are awful. Bring back Anne and Dan from the first two movies at this point, bro, because this is absolute nonsense. The guy who plays Mordo is in this movie. The dude who plays the Lizard is playing a character in this movie. And you know what they both have in common, along with that stupid scientist who her brother gets hit by lightning, so now she's the Flash symbiote at the end of it. It's like, what even is this movie? All of these side characters they have in common, they contribute nothing to the plot, nothing to the story, and nothing to your entertainment. And then you wrap all this up and find out at the very end credit scene that the Venom symbiote piece that was still in Eddie Brock's reality is still there. So we are probably going to see Tom Hardy as Venom again, possibly as soon as Spider-Man 4. So what was the point of this movie? Venom dies, but he's coming back in 1 year. So who cares? Nothing matters in this movie, nothing's good in this movie, nothing makes sense in this movie, and barely any of it is funny or entertaining. So what was the point of this movie? I don't know. You get a 2 out of 10 Venom The Last Dance. Thank you so much for playing. You were awful. Still better than Joker 2, but you were awful.